we're gonna see him in a few minutes. Okay, just real quick, is there? Let's talk about what we talked about last week, real quick, if you would, like, as to what did we go through and what did we discuss? Anyone can perhaps recall?
All I remember that they found out that the girl was in love with the goldsmith, and they were going to go send for the goldsmith.
Okay, so the girl was in love with the goldsmith in another town,
Samarkand, yeah.
Right, and then they were going to go and fetch that guy.
Yeah.
And another thing that we realized was that the issue, we realized that the sickness that the girl was experiencing was a sickness of the heart rather than the body, or it was an illness of the soul rather than the body.
Yeah.
I have to start to just right off the bat here, I need to use a vocabulary in two different ways, and if you guys can help me and make sure that we all are in agreement. So in Farsi we have the word ruh and another word which is, we call it the jan. So there's the ruh and the jan, which ruh perhaps it's most of the time it's been translated as the word spirit. And John, if you actually go after, or go into the dictionary and try to find an equivalent in English, they actually, put you back into the word spirit, which does make sense. But in reality, Rumi uses them in two different retrospects. So for Rumi, the word ruh, or spirit, is what everybody has. Basically, once we are created, and once we're created from the spirits of the God's breath, we all get what they call the ruh, right? And from that point on, once our ruh, or spirit, is elevated and it expands, and it actually gets to a point whereas it can find its way to its source and to where it needs to go and all that, that's when he refers to it as John. Or I don't know if it's the right thing to do this or not, but I need an agreement here with all of us that I want to refer to it as the soul.
Yes, the soul, I was going to suggest, really is all encompassing.
Okay, so if you all agree that the soul encompasses a elevated spirit,
yeah,
then we're going to be okay going forward, because there is going to be a distinction, and Rumi is about to make that distinction as we actually read the rest of the story. And I need to make sure that we're all in agreement with that as we go forward.
So we're actually,
spirit. Oh, sorry.
Here comes the lawyer partitioning things. So we're going to say that the word soul, actually there's two definitions for soul in Rumi's version. Because really, like in English, because I don't know what John, to be honest, I thought John means like
life.
Here, or your life, right? So my Farsi is not that good to understand.
No. This has nothing to do with your Farsi. You're right. For instance, I say Mori John.
Right.
Again, that's one way. But he refers to this word in his poetry, the word right. John, and then he refers to John a John on. So then all of a sudden this becomes Now that's a, we're going to get to it as far as what that is eventually.
Is that the soul of the soul of the
The soul of the soul, which is God, basically.
soul of your,
Yeah.
so but is this in English the way I've always known a soul is what you're born with, what returns back to our maker. So there's no distinction in English. So but Rumi is making a distinction between the spirit and the soul, and when you get enlightened, that's your spirit becomes a soul, and that's what returns to our maker.
That's correct.
Is that what we're saying?
So so here is, I mean, I want you guys to grasp this as we go forward with stories. But yesterday in my Farsi class, I recommended everybody to see the movie Defending Your Life.
Okay.
Have you guys seen it? It's an old movie.
I have not.
It's
a 90s movie, right?
It's a 90s movie. That's correct.
The
So
comedian.
Meryl Streep is in it with I forgot the comedian's name.
Yeah, he was in Making the Muslim World Laugh, that movie.
Yeah, he was in that one too. You're right. But in that one, what happens is that, we're gonna get to these concepts. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I hope, I'm not. I don't necessarily want to confuse anyone, but sooner or later we're gonna get to these concepts. Like another concept that we're gonna get into is reincarnation. And in a form, Rumi does believe that we will, our soul will return. And there is a circular motion that he feels that, until we fully are ready to be dissolved and be part of God. Now, again, I don't want to get ahead of myself. And please do not use what I just said. So put it in parentheses and put it aside, because we need to read it through his words. And I don't want to necessarily get, before, we are, into exactly that spot. I don't want to jump into it. So, but you're right. So we're born with a spirit and we elevate into a soul. Let's put it this way. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I think where we left off is right about here, the healing of the sick slave girl.
That's right. That's
I
right.
think that's where we left off. All right.
Yeah.
So let's read this, and then again, we're gonna go and we're gonna have some discussions fairly soon. So when the seeds are hidden deep beneath the ground, their secret turns to verdure all around. And the word, I'm trying to be a little bit more educational here. So let me also help everyone with this. Excuse me. So verdure is basically a lush green vegetable or something like that. So basically what he's saying is that everything starts from a darkness, and a darkness can allow, a darkness would, not a darkness necessarily, but being hidden from the eyes and being hidden from the ground allows us to actually manifest and grow into where we need to go. So silver and gold are hidden in the mind. To nurture them and purify them their shine. The doctor's soothing words and promises relieve the girl of countless illnesses. True promises give pleasure constantly. False promises increase anxiety. The promise of the pure's hard currency. The promise of the base brings bankruptcy. Now, in this case, I got to explain what he says regarding. He's talking about if there is a promise, and the promise is coming from the soul. It is a promise that is completely in line with what you feel within yourself. Okay, it's something that it gives pleasure to your heart, and therefore that's when you know that that's a true promise. And if there is a false promise out there, it actually increases an anxiety, and anxiety in this thing is talking about, in a sense, like um, let's say, you know, somebody gives a promise that I will, for instance, do a specific evil or do something bad, and a majority of the time that type of promise is something that gives us anxiety, just because it's not in line with our true and original nature. So then he says, the promise of the pure's heart, a promise of the pure's heart currency. Now, in this case, the translation is not necessarily doing justice here. He's referring to an immense amount of wealth. And he says that if somebody who has been, who is from a pure soul, you know, and he makes a promise, that is like, you know, you've been given an immense amount of wealth. And the promise of the base brings bankruptcy, means like, you know, somebody who is not part of that, you know, group of enlightened people. And if he makes a promise, it actually brings you into, and bankruptcy here means the fact that, you know, you will bankrupt your soul. You will bankrupt your spirit. Let's just say that your spirit would never get a chance. We'll get to that in a few minutes, as far as, you know, what does that really mean. So the saint identifies the affliction and explains it to the king. Then he stood up and headed for the king to share a bit of what was happening. What you must do is summon here that man to cure her pain. This is the wisest plan. Summon the goldsmith from that distant town. With gold and robes of honor, bring him down. Hello, Monsen. Glad you
Sorry
could make
about that.
That's all
There
right.
you go. There you go.
That was amazing. I have never had a problem with Zoom. I mean, that's amazing tonight.
It's okay. So after this speech, the king chose to obey each word that he had heard the healer say. So basically, they're decided that, hey, let's go and get this guy, and because remember, the ultimate goal was to get this, you know, this girl cured. So the king sends messengers to Samarkand and brings the goldsmith. The king then sent 2 men to Samarkand, both shrewd, explained men at his command. So there were, you know, some people who would not, who would not disobey his commands. As soon as they arrived, there they began to read this message to the wanted man. O gentle master, pure intelligence, talk everywhere is of your eminence. So basically, they're like, you know, they started to butter him up a little bit. And they're like, hey, you know, everybody knows about you, and you are such a wonderful person. And our king requests you for your peerless skill. This vacancy no other man can fill. Accept this robe of honor and this gold. When you arrive a special rank, you'll hold. So then they promise them that, you know, once you get there, we will honor you with a very specific, rank, as well as, gifts. On seeing robes and wealth, he was beglided.
Beguiled.
Yeah. Which in this case, what this, I decided that I'm going to look up all these words and tell you guys if there is something that I don't know. I will look it up. And anyone wants to help me with it? So basically, it's a charm or enchant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he left his town folk, even his own child, So basically, once he saw all of this stuff that they were offering him, he basically let go of everything that he had, right? Now, here's a question that I want to ask you guys. So what happens when these what's happening to the goldsmith when he's getting all these promises from these guys? What's happening to him?
He's getting a false sense of worth.
Exactly. And what if we were to look at again the four elements that we are always going to kind of look into, which is the mind and the ego and the heart and the soul. So what parts of him are right now commanding this guy?
Oh, it's got to be the ego.
Absolutely.
His ego.
So it's the ego and the mind, which are basically telling him, hey, you are basically going to be, you'll get a fortune. So it's to a point whereas he even leaves his own family behind. Okay.
Yeah.
And greed.
So greed, of course, is part of, again, a ego's attribute, right?
And greed, Mohsen.
Yeah, and that is an attribute of the ego, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having a really hard time. I keep not hearing you. It cuts out. It kicked me out. It came back.
You also
I apologize.
are cutting out too. So I don't know, is your phone using its own internet or your Wi-Fi? Sometimes
no, not my Wi-Fi. I'm on the Wi. No, I'm on Wi-Fi, but I think my Wi-Fi weak up here.
Yeah, because you also
Can you
cut
hear
out
me?
a little bit at times.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
It's okay. So on seeing robes and wealth, he was beglided, and he left his townfolk, even his own child. He set off the journey feeling thrilled, without a clue the king would have him killed. You guys will see what that statement means in a minute. So he proudly mounted an Arabian stud, not knowing that the prize was his own blood. Conceited fool, you fail to comprehend, so eagerly you race to your own end. He dreamt of majesty that won't cease, as Israel, or in this case, it's the angel of death, or Israel or Azrael, said, come and grab your piece. So basically what he was going towards was basically his own death, as he basically obeyed his ego and decided to leave everything behind and go on this journey. So he was escorted after entering upon the royal throne to meet the king. The escorts treated him with special care. They knew his love of pomp. It was snare. So basically, they basically gave him anything that would put him in a, they just kept feeding his ego. And of course, all the attributes associated with it. So the fact that he wanted to be famous and he wanted to, he was greedy and he wanted to basically be recognized and all that. So they basically fed him all of that. So the king embraced him like a friend of old, entrusting to him all his stores of gold. So basically, just like how they said they would, the king basically gave him all of his basically treasury, or their treasury department in a way. The doctor urged, there is more you can award. Why don't you give the girl as a reward? So the doctor then comes back and says, as part of the rest of the award that this guy is supposed to get, you got to also allow him and the girl to be together.
Didn't the guy have a family back home? Did he, the child? Am I missing something?
No, you're not. It's as exactly as it is. Yeah. So yes, the guy has a family. And again, these are, again, the attributes of ego. So the ego wants more and wants more and wants more. And now in this case, what's happening is that the king is feeding him exactly what the ego is asking for. More and more and more. And like you, another thing that you're pointing out is the fact that he has broken all the bonds and all the promises that, you know, he had made in the past. Now, remember, right before we get to this, and this was line 200, I just want to make sure that, remember we read that line about the promise of the pure is hard currency and the promise of the base brings bankruptcy. In this case, this is not the right word, the base, but it's talking about the people who actually are very much egocentric. And I guess in our words, we talk about narcissists or so. I mean, narcissists are generally people who are very, very true to their own ego and their own whatever serves them, right? And in this case, this is what it is. Whoever gets a promise from a person who is constantly trying to serve his own, that promise, which a marriage vow is also a promise, would bring bankruptcy because he can never keep that promise. So that's why he's brought these two lines. And just like, you know, Morvar, you touched on this right now. Yes, he has a family, but he broke that promise because he was a man of bad faith, or bad
Selfish.
Moral.
bad moral.
Bad.
Okay. So through union with this man, she could be nursed. Love's waters might river her, quench her thirst. So in this case, remember, you know, this, her vital signs had started to, you know, show signs of strength or activity once, you know, she had heard this guy's name. So now, you know, the king is like, you know, that saint is telling the king that allow her to actually be, you know, with this guy because this actually would revive certain things in her. So the maiden then received a wedding band. They joined the couple just as they had planned. The first 6 months together, how they thrived, the servant girl soon totally revived. So after 6 months of them being together, and this, you know, goldsmith is now, you know, living it up, you know, basically having the entire you know, treasury of the king to himself, and a beautiful girl, and everybody's catering to his ego, so he's living it up and everybody's all good. But then the groom was poisoned in a plot. She saw the doctor's potion make him rot. So the true translation of this line is that, you know, the saint gives her a potion which would basically poison the guy and make him ill. This was a prescribed act.
I'm sorry. The saint gives it to the maid, and she gives it to him.
Yes. Yes.
So the maid poisoned the goldsmith?
Yes.
What was her motivation?
You'll see.
Okay.
Patience. Good question. Okay, this is good. So through sickness, he lost all his youthfulness. Each day, his looks got worse. Her love grew less. He soon became so ugly, pale, and old. Then she could feel her heart becoming cold. So this is a very important line, which in Farsi, it's a very, very famous line of poetry, which says, love which is based on just a pretty face is not true love. It ends in sheer disgrace. In Farsi, it says, عشق هایی که از پی رنگی بود، عشق نبود، عاقبت ننگی بود. Means that, you know, if a love, just like it is. So basically, Rumi is about to start telling us that there is a true love, and there is something of a idea of love that we may have. and if idea of love is totally based on the looks of things, these things can be transformed, and everything that has a look, at one point that look is going to go away. And if that look goes away, if the love still is there, that means that it was a true love. And if the love is not there, that means that to begin with it wasn't a true love. That's again according to what Rumi is saying. So love which is based on just a pretty face is not a true love. It ends in sheer disgrace. Would that had been all over so debased, and therefore spared the judgment he has faced. Instead of tears, his eyes gushed blood in streams. His face became his enemy, it seems. Feathers became the peacock. So basically now of course the guy gets so ill that he's now shedding tears of blood, and he's obviously the girl now completely has broken her relationship or whatever they had together. Now Rumi is about to explain. It gives us 3 or 4 examples. And I'm going to tell you, after I read these 4 lines, I'm going to tell you this is why we wanted to make sure that we talk about a spirit and a soul. So it says, feathers become the peacock's bitter foe, and kings were killed by their own love of show. He said, so in this case, he's talking about a peacock. Peacock is beautiful because of the feathers that it has. And in this case, Rumi is saying that the beauty that he displays, that the peacock displays, is something that can become his enemy. And also it says that even kings, when they are killed or when they are, basically brought down, they are their own love of showing grace and I'm sorry, not grace, but showing greatness and power is what it becomes their own enemy. I'm gonna just real quick. This is something that some of you guys may relate to. Everybody, when you look at historians, and I'm not trying to get political here, but when they look at then talk about Shah of Iran, everyone talks about the ceremonies that he had in Shiraz for the 2,500 years of dynasty of Kurosh. And they say that after that was his demise. That's basically that triggered him basically starting to kind of lose the grip of his country. And that was the greatest show on earth at that time. It was no other nation had ever brought so many heads of states into one place with such luxury and security and so much attendance and so much technology and all of that. So to extent, this line actually just basically shows a little bit of truth in our modern time as well. And this can also be of anyone who feeds the ego, and that ego expresses outwards into the public eye. And this is what Rumi says. We're going to talk about, we've already mentioned the evil eye, and we're going to talk about the evil eye. I think last time it was that we talked about the evil eye. And we're going to, we will talk about it again, because Rumi keeps bringing this up, that you cannot constantly having this evil eye show up in your life, because it would eventually hurt your purpose and what you're planning on doing.
So Mohsen, this is the non-mahram that you were kind of saying last week, like don't show something you said. I forgot what it was in context of. I'm sorry, but something you said, Kimasan, but sorry, that you should not show certain things to those who are not like your trusted inner circle. And you use the word non-mahram. It's kind of the same thing.
What we were talking about, I got it. So what we were talking about last week about the non-mahram part is, as we discover the secrets of the universe, that is the part that not every ear and not every eye can see and understand. So that is the namahram part.
Okay,
This is basically just for general public and general living, in a sense that the more you show off in life, and unfortunately we live in Los Angeles, I mean, we see this constantly, and you know, our social media doesn't really help this out either. I mean, everybody likes to show, you know, they have it, you know, we all have it. We all have friends who do this. We all see it and all that stuff. Rumi says that the more you do this, the more you attract this evil eye and evil, omen towards yourself, and you shouldn't. You just shouldn't. It's just that, again, he will explain later on that how this actually, even starts to work, and how does it actually come towards you, and how is it that you even attract it at times towards yourself. It's amazing how he actually puts it together. So we'll discuss it further as well in a few pages.
I just have a question.
Sure.
So with the Goldsmith, he just appeared as ego.
Yeah.
And right to be poisoned, right? And I mean, like the girls in love with the Goldsmith, we assume it's because he has a pretty face, or he has something that's superficial. But I'm wondering,
it's about something that's not. It's not something that would last forever. It's something that's only around for a limited amount of time.
But the king was basically going to poison him no matter what.
Hold on to that. We're gonna actually, all of us are gonna discuss it.
Okay.
I mean, it's a great segue into it. Just hold on, because this, there's a punchline to all of this, and all of us are gonna discuss, because I want to eventually understand who's the king, who's the goldsmith, who's the girl, and who is the saint.
Okay.
How do they work together? I mean, all these characters actually work together, and we're going to discuss it. So this is a great segue, but hold on.
Okay.
So any other questions? We're good? Okay. So he said, I'm like the deer of, he said, so basically this is the goldsmith basically giving his last breath. He says, I'm like the deer of whose musk scent hunters desire to catch and then torment. So basically the deers are hunted because of their scent, and of course, and their perhaps the meat. The desert fox, which when they capture her, they chop her head off just to keep the fur. That's correct. So the fur is pretty expensive. It's very nice. The elephant who's beaten savagely, they shed his blood just for his ivory. Okay. Those who would kill for secondary goals should know I'll take my revenge on their souls. Now, he's talking about the fact that when we take another, this translation, he's referring to souls, but we decided that we're going to use the word spirit for it. So if we take somebody's spirit unjustly, that unjust action is something, as a matter of fact, regardless whether it's just or unjust, I should not put the word just or unjust in here, because in Rumi poetry, that's not there. So I cannot insert that in there. So if somebody's, spirit is taken, that blood would not rest until, another spirit is taken in its return. And this is something that Rumi eventually, in perhaps 3-4 weeks later from now, we're going to get to that. Rumi talks about the fact that there is a cause and effect for everything in this world. And as a matter of fact, now also in the end of this story, he talks about this, but he would expand on it later on. So so this guy is now basically saying that, this is what happens, and there is going to be a vengeance on the person who actually just took my spirit away. I'm now the victim. Your turn's coming soon. Those hungry for my blood are not immune. A lengthy shadow through a wall can cast. That shadow will return to it at last. The world's a mountain, actions like a shout. Your echo will return to you. Watch out. So this is also another famous line of poetry, which in Farsi it says, in جهان کو هست و فعل ما ندا سوی ما آید نداها را صدا. Basically, that's this line. The world's a mountain. Actions are like a shout. Your echo will return to you, so watch out. Those were his final words when he was slain. The slave girl now was purged of love and pain. So the part that I want to make sure that we all kind of pay attention to is the 4 examples that the Rumi brings in this part. So he's talking about a peacock, and he talks about the deer, and he talks about a fox and an elephant. And if you look at all of them, these are live animals, and we are live animals. So so basically what he's saying is talking about a spirit which exists in every animal or every living being in this world. That's why he's saying that if you do anything with this spirit, or if this spirit, amongst the living souls, there is this, bond, and there is this agreement that your actions will trigger another reaction. He's not talking about the soul here. And the reason is that, again, he's considering the goldsmith to be a not elevated spirit. He's considering him somebody who still is, needs to work with himself in order to expand his spirit so that he would become a soul. Am I making sense? Okay. So that's why with these 4 examples, Rumi kind of seals the conversation in the sense that this is, so basically this is what we in Farsi we talk about as ruh, not John. So he's talking about, and that's why he brings these 4 animals in here. And all of us, when we are born, just like the rest of animals, we have a spirit. Until we understand how our ego works and ourselves, what are we made of? How do we work with our heart? How do we receive messages with our heart? How can we turn off our mind? How can we control our ego so that we can start receiving messages, which that would in turn elevate our spirit into a soul. Okay. All right. Love is,
and among the living, human are the only ones that have that capability.
I think so. Yes. So and let me ask you this: do you know why?
Well, my belief is by design.
Well, there is a specific design that, there's a specific design element that actually gives us that capability.
Free will?
Go ahead.
Free will?
Free will. Yeah. That's it. Awesome. Yeah. So we're the ones who are given the free will. We get to choose.
Yeah. Because
we get to choose this choice. Now, get ready for this because this is going to get fun. Because in a few, I think in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about free will versus destiny. And how do we explain those? Because when you're talking about free will, that means that I'm the one who get to choose my destiny. But then Rumi is going to come back and say that there is also another, again, I don't want to confuse you guys, but I got to give you guys previews because this is all we're going to, start exploring, which is fun. It's great. Rumi is going to come back and say that everybody's destiny is also somehow determined. So how does this work? We're going to get there. So this is, I want to, just wait.
Is determined, Mohsen.
I'm sorry?
I'm confused. I'm sorry. You said Rumi's going to say everyone's destiny is determined.
Morvari John, you need to repeat what you said because you just froze. Okay, you froze. So you need to repeat that again. And you're muted now.
I know you got cut off. You keep getting cut off. You're on Wi-Fi. I think it's I decided to sit somewhere different and it's not doing so well. You were saying that basically you're going to tell us that he said it's a combination of destiny and free will. Okay.
It is a combination of that. And that is such a, kind of a, it doesn't make sense to our logic, as a matter of fact. And that is like something that, we're like, what the hell, how does this work? And that's the part that we're like, we're going to get there though. And it's going to be fun. So apparently this was his last words. So there was his final words when he was slain. The slave girl now was purged of love and pain. Love of the dead is not a lasting love. Now he's talking about not the dead. In this case, the dead means people who are dead in their heart. So Rumi believes that if we are alive, we're alive because we have a alive heart. And that doesn't mean that the heart is beating. That means that, we have a heart that is communicating and is receiving messages from our beloved. That is the heart that is alive. So love of the dead, or something that can eventually be gone, is not a lasting love, because the dead don't come back from above. Now, I told you guys that I will, at the very beginning, I told you guys that I will be coding a lot of movies, and I do encourage you guys to watch movies. So for instance, the movie, Defending Your Life is one of them. Another one of the movies that I really like is Ghost. And I specifically like Ghost because at the very end, there is a scene where Patrick Swayze is telling Demi Moore that it's amazing. The love inside is what you take it with you. And that is very much in line with this line, that if it's true love, that is what you actually get to have with you, or keep it with you and take it with you. Okay. So love of the living, in your soul and blood, each moment makes you fresher than a bud. That's basically what the line also from that movie is. So when you actually are loving something that is not of dying nature, and that can also happen between people, when the two souls are so connected, the love between them and that connection is not something that just can die by itself. Save love for him, eternal and divine. So it says that if you really want to love, or if you really want to, find something to love, find something that's eternal and divine. And it says the sari, with soul expanding wine. In this case, sari is the word for the person who actually is always pouring the wine. And he says that you need to be able to basically get connected in such way that you are constantly being fed this eternal and everlasting wine, which gives you this eternal everlasting drunkenness. choose love of him from whose resemblant face the prophets find their mission and their grace. And he says that, go after the love that, everyone who, in this case, when he's talking about prophets, he's talking about anyone who's been connected and elevated and has been, has been close to God. And I have to say that in Farsi, there's a word of Anbiya and Awliya. So Anbiya is the words that we use for prophets and the imams and those guys. And then there's the Awliya, and Awliya are the souls or the people who were able to actually connect in that form and fashion as well. And Rumi himself is part of the Awliya or those specific group of people himself. So choose love of him from those resemblant face, from whose resemblant face the prophets find their mission and their grace. Now, this last line is a bad translation. I'll read it, but then I'll have to explain it. So it says, don't tell me from that king we have been barred. Dealing with a nobleman is not that hard. That's not what this last line is. So he's talking about folks who say that whatever I've been asking God, I don't get anything. Every time I actually ask God for something, I'm not getting any, I don't receive anything from him. So basically, there are some folks who say that this king has completely shut us out of his kingdom, and we can't get into his kingdom. So that's the first line. And the second line, it says, you have to remember that in this case, the word noble is talking about somebody whose generosity and kindness goes beyond any imagination. So he's saying dealing with a nobleman is not that hard. That's not the right thing to say, as a matter of fact. It should say that for someone whose generosity and whose kindness goes beyond your imagination, nothing is impossible for him. So basically what he's saying is that you need to connect to that you need to connect to that vast and everlasting ocean of love and being, and just ask for anything that you want, because it's an ocean of abundance, and it's just its mission is to just give and provide. So the fact that you're not getting that's because you're not connected. So unfortunately, this last two lines are not translated as and it doesn't necessarily give a good meaning to it. All right. So basically now the goldsmith is dead. And in this case, this is actually the true title, that the explanation of how the goldsmith's murder by poisoning was in accord with God's instruction, not due to passion and corrupt wishes of the cruel soul. Now, here's my question, and Mateen actually did bring this up, that the goldsmith is basically our ego. Now, there's three other characters in there. So it's the girl, it's the king, and it's the saint. And I want to understand, what are those? What symbols are those characters connected to, or what symbol are those characters basically reflecting in ourselves? If you were to look at us, just one person, me, let's just say, and again, it would be good if we can just fit them in the four categories of the mind, or perhaps the soul, the ego, the mind, and the heart. So,
well, the mind would be the saint that directs the
actually,
process.
So sorry. I should say count the mind and the ego as one for now.
Oh, I see.
So that I apologize. I cannot because then you would fall into that trap. So count the mind and the ego as one, and then you've got the mind and the ego, and you've got the heart and the soul, or the spirit.
Spirit in the Ruh sense or the John sense?
You tell me.
Spirit for the John sense.
How so?
Oh, I'm thinking the saint is the John.
Okay. So how speak through it. That would be much better. That way, you know, I think you will also find it easier to describe.
So like there's like a purified, someone who's arrived at a purified state.
Okay, so let me ask you this: the king. What was the king when he originally fell for the girl?
He was madly in love with the girl.
Exactly.
And
so how would you describe that specific? I mean,
I'm thinking through the kind of love, right? If the love was like the love that the girl had,
okay,
and that's more of like that was like a temporary love that the girl had.
Okay.
If there was a real love, like the love of the lasting love, then you would suddenly be elevated if you have that love.
Okay, good. So do you remember what happened when the saint had the dream? And I'm sorry, when the king had the dream and he saw the saint the next day? Do you remember that conversation?
He gave up on the girl and was in love with the saint.
Okay, so what did he say? Do you remember?
He was like, you are the one who I was wanting.
Ah, there you go. So he said, you are the one that I was in love with, not her.
Yeah.
So what happened then to him?
Then he forgot about the girl.
So, okay, good. So think about it from the perspective of a spirit and soul. What happened to him?
So he was in love with love then.
Exactly. So what happened to him from perspective of spirit and soul?
So he became a John.
He became a John. He became the soul, right?
Yeah.
So basically now what you're saying is that the king originally was a spirit, but then he became a soul.
Yeah, he went from loving the girl to loving the real.
That's awesome. Okay, that's perfect. So, all right, good. So the goldsmith, we also know who he was. So now it's the girl. So what's the girl in us?
So the girl was in love with the guy, was in love with the ego, but she also went through a journey, I guess.
She did.
Because she was, once she realized what that guy with the goldsmith was all about, she was no longer in love with him.
Right. So then what is the girl? So the soul is already taken, the ego is already taken.
Like leave the heart.
Leave the heart, right? Because there's no other option.
There shouldn't be. But why is that?
I mean, the heart is the antenna.
Ah, good.
Right. So the girl was getting those feelings, and
so the girl was that basically once, because the antenna was pointed towards the wrong direction, right? It was pointed towards Samarkand. And somehow the antenna needed to be pointed the other direction.
He was going with the wind, it looks
exactly.
like.
But the wind, well, not necessarily with the wind. It was actually going with exactly what the ego was asking for.
Because it was out of her control. She was going, other people were directing her.
Right. So in this case, just again, actually, Matin said, I like his expression. Yeah, it's the antenna that needed to be pointed this way. And of course, it was kept coming back. And it got to a point where it got really sick, right? Because what does that tell us about the heart? What does that tell us about the heart?
The heart is sensitive.
And how sensitive is it? Is it or
That's like a promise.
It looks like
right?
things can influence the heart, right?
Yeah. That's like the base promise.
Okay, good. Very good.
It's like a what?
The promise of the base.
Oh, the problem, yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess all of this that's very good. So basically the heart cannot fully grasp what it needs. So in this case, the heart is the weakest element of all of this, perhaps. You have the strongest element, which is the ego. Ego uses the mind to justify whatever he wants. The heart just follows it then. Now so this is why then there was this, the ego had to die so that the heart could be free of this, unfortunate ego-driven thoughts. And in this case, bring everything back so that now it can be pointed to the right direction. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Now, who was the saint?
Well, the saint killed the ego.
He did. But the saint actually instructed us to kill the ego, right?
Right, because the girl killed the ego.
Exactly. So it wasn't it was not the saint who killed. Saint just gave instructions, right? So in this case, the king would not have listened to the instructions of the ego. I'm sorry. So the king would not have listened to the instructions of the saint unless he had seen and experienced in his own eyes that that these folks who had claimed that they were doctors could not have cured his heart, right? Does that make sense?
So
He proved himself. He proved himself first before he could believe him.
Say again, please, Rasul. I'm sorry.
I say he proved himself to be above others.
Okay, very good. So how did? But in a way, the king arrived at that understanding, right?
Right.
So if we were to put this in Rumi's sense, so if we were to look at this collectively, it looks like if the king is us at a spirit form and extremely naive. If that's the case, we need to go through a certain amount of journey. We need to live a little bit. And we need to figure out a couple of things. And the reason, for instance, he's putting the characters in such ways that we need to first also understand who we are and what are we made of. The king knew he was the king. He knew who he was, at least. And the fact of the matter is that what he had done is that he had to live through a little bit of this journey in order to fully understand who is his true love and how to connect, right? I mean, there was a moment that he connected. Am I correct?
With the saint.
With the saint. I mean, he went to the mosque. He cried his eyes out. He had a dream. In that dream, he was told that a saint is going to come, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So again, so this all, if you look at it, it's kind of a life story in a way that sometimes we have to go through in order to fully realize our true love and our true, purpose for elevating ourselves into a soul. And cutting from all the attributes of our egos in this journey, somehow kind of cutting away from it. Okay, guys, tell me what are your thoughts? This is basically, it's good. It's been a good discussion, but I want you guys to hopefully fully grasp it. More worried, anything from you?
I think I'm lost because
Okay.
you guys are talking about stuff from a couple classes ago. I don't remember the king, this part of the king realizing the saint is his true love. Did I miss that? Was that a couple?
Yeah, you were not.
So I'm
There was
to be,
one class that you missed, and we talked about that.
yeah. So I didn't know that the king had an epiphany and realized this the maid was not his true love. And I did actually, I'll be honest with you, I had to grab a call right above this. If you could scroll, if I can read that last bit you were explaining, I missed that part too. But I'm a little lost because I'm not a little, I'm pretty lost to be honest.
Okay. All right. So again, we were talking about the 4 characters in this.
Oh, that part I understood, but I didn't know what happened at the end, that last paragraph. And the characters I see, but I didn't know the king had an epiphany. I thought he was the I thought he.
So there was, yeah, the king. What happens is that he brings all the doctors, and at that time Rumi explains that the doctors were all basically all too sure of themselves that they were going to cure this this girl.
Right.
However, they forgot to say God willing, and I think you remember that part.
I do remember that part.
Okay,
exactly.
good.
Yeah.
So after that happened, once the king realized that, wait a second, these guys are unable to do what I want them to do. In a way, they cannot, basically cure what my love. He runs to the mosque and he starts praying, and in his prayer he just basically goes all out to a point, whereas he feels he basically tells God that you are the only. If you remember, he does a little bit of a prayer there. Even Rumi says that he asks God for anything, for any help, in order to be able to cure this girl, and he falls asleep. And that in his sleep he gets that that message, or that he gets connected to the divine source in a way, and he gets that message, and the message is like, now that you wanted, your prayer is answered, we're going to send you a saint. So the next day he goes and he greets the saint. So the saint comes, he meets with the girl, he realizes that the girl's illness is not from anything from her body, it is something which is completely connected to her heart and soul, and in the form of the story that we have. So therefore he realizes that there is a guy in Samarkand and all that. So in this case, what we're saying is that if we were to put these characters into what we look at as the heart and the soul, and the ego and the mind, and we said ego and the mind are going to be the same. So in this case, what the story is telling us is that if we are the king, that means that we are the king of our own being. And we are here, and we know that there is a true love that we can elevate into. There is a different level of love that we can elevate into, but we don't know how to get there. We start asking around. That's when we actually go to different doctors, and we're like, hey, how does this happen? And the doctors can't tell us the right thing until we break free of all of them and we connect to God, and we keep asking, hey, why don't you show me the way and show me how I can get there? So this is exactly what the king did. So he asked for help, and he asked for the way, and that's when a message was sent down, and he trusted the message. So that's when
that was the key. That was the key right there, that he trusted it.
You need to trust. You need to trust the message, and that is basically, in other words, you need to have faith and trust that the message that you receive is the right message, and it's going to lead you to the way. So he was patient. So he stayed patient, he trusted, and
He prayed.
eventually, yes, the ego was killed and the heart was now free. So the heart could actually now be the right connection towards where, you know, it needed to go.
Okay.
Okay.
I got it. Yes. Thank
So
you.
is that clear now?
Very. Thank you.
Awesome. So this is important for this is because this is the first story of Masnavi, and it's very important for us to set these characters and how they work together, because as we step through the rest of the Masnavi, this is it. These are the four characters: mind, the heart and the soul and the mind and the ego. They're all going to be in every single one of these stories. And we're going to constantly go. And Rumi, at some point, emphasizes a lot on the soul, and then he emphasizes a lot on the heart, and then, you know, others, just because he wants us fully understand where we're coming from and how do we work with this. Because we just say this, like, for instance, the word that, you know, Rasul just said, you know, trust. Yes, we say that. But what is trust? And we need to learn that through, again, it's what we are set to go through is going through this journey of understanding this through Rumi poetry, so that we fully get what this trust is. How can we lead ourselves in the right way? Because sometimes, again, when it comes down to trust, so again, like, you guys know what gut feeling is, right? You're like, my gut feeling told me I should do this, but I didn't. It happens a lot. So we get those messages from time to time. So we're hoping that as we go through all these lessons and all these, you know, stories, we're able to actually kind of better work with these gut feelings, or at least kind of understand them better a little bit. So here's where, you know, basically Rumi also explains this a little bit for us. So he says, go ahead.
So we understand the saint as a message then.
He is the divine message. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, he was the divine message. And all of us get that. Believe it or not, sooner or later, we're also going to run into this thing that Rumi believed in dreams. He believes that dreams are a basic way of us getting messages. You guys may have read books or, you know, listened to certain, you know, self-help, you know, lecturers who say that, for instance, if you have a dream, write it down. Because what happens is that, you know, the movie Inception, so, my God, you know, I do watch a lot of movies, I have to say this, but that's another movie that I really love, because in there, it talks about even, you know, there are certain things that in there is completely true. So some of our dreams are completely coming from our subconscious. And like, that's why when we get up, we may remember bits and pieces, but then the rest of it, we just forget. And by midday, we have completely forgotten the dream. We've completely forgotten it. So when you start writing down your dreams, when you get up, literally, it's an exercise to do. I did it at one point. It can get a little freaky. That's the right word for it. Sorry. But when you do that, you start exercising your subconscious a lot. And that's interesting. Certain interesting stuff starts happening. So you might want to exercise that. But yes, Rumi fully believes in the power of dreams and how dreams actually can, you know, manifest into our, you know, current reality. So he encourages this as well. We'll get to that soon enough. Yeah.
Mohsen?
Yes.
I would like to say something about this trust that we started the conversation about. So, for example, if God forbid you have a family member that is severely ill with something that only one doctor can fix, that you researched and everybody tells you go to Dr. X and he can take care of it for you.
Mhm.
When you go there, you're already ready to accept whatever that doctor tells you to do. You have unconditional trust.
Yes.
And that you have to only have in you to accept, to be trusting.
Yes.
You can't,
very true.
yeah. So that's you, that you have to be ready to be trusting whatever comes.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that's a great example. I'm just going to add a little anecdote to it, though, which is, and what if you do that and still that person is not cured? And the answer to that comes also in subsequent sessions that we're going to read, because there are certain things that we have to completely, so when it comes down to trust, as we ask, and there is a, so I'm going to keep on and this is great this is great discussion, guys, because it all reflects back into what we have read and studied in the past 4 weeks. If you remember, there was a piece of poetry that we read about our attitude towards learning and our attitude towards, if you remember, it was about your manners towards a connected soul, right? This was at the very beginning of the book. Okay. The fact of the matter is that we do trust, and we have to also trust the entire process. We trust our instinct, but at the same time, we have to trust the entire process. So you do what you need to do, you trust and give your best of focus and faith, but sometimes what you want is not manifesting. And that still is something that you need to still trust in. That if it didn't manifest, it wasn't meant to be. And Rumi will talk about this. I'm not saying it from my own. This is something that you guys will read in the stories as they come. Rumi will discuss this.
And that kind of goes back a little to the free will, or is everything
Exactly
destiny?
right.
It is. Oh, absolutely.
It's all intertwined.
Yeah.
Yes. But I'm really happy that you guys had this conversation and discussion. This is really good. This is basically again us getting into a different gear as we're going through this going through the first book of Masnavi. I want to read
one more thing.
Sure.
One last thing, hopefully, on this subject about this metaphor that we use of the doctor, that if you go and you still didn't get well, that goes back to, like, personally, and I say it in Farsi, hopefully you can translate it and make sense of it in English, that you say, Raziyam be Reza.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So what that I do, I'll do all I can do. I'm not going to stand still. I'm going to go seek the experts' advice and do all I can do. But at the end, is what you want is what's going to happen.
Let me.
Can you translate?
Go ahead.
Can you translate that for us? I know what Razi means.
So it's I'm content with God's will.
And how do you say that? ببخشید میشه راضیم باشی؟
راضیم به رضای خدا.
Yeah.
با چی؟
رضای خدا. Reza means it also means that anything that you are in agreement with.
So Reza, the name Reza comes from that.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. It does. Okay. Awesome. Let me just on that note, Rasul, I don't mind sharing personal experiences here. So I lost my father, of course, 20 years ago. But when he, on his last year, he was suffering from, he had a condition called muscular dystrophy, which eventually I found out what it is and so forth. And it's something that there's no cure for it.
Jerry Lewis.
Yes, Jerry Lewis also had muscular dystrophy. That's correct.
Yeah.
And, his cause of death, of course, was colon cancer, which, again, this all kind of happened very quickly at the same time. But I never forget this part. He came to the US and we decided to go to the Mayo Clinic. and I accompanied him to Mayo Clinic. That's in Minnesota, Rochester, Minnesota. So I remember at that time I had studied everything that had to do with muscular dystrophy. And basically I knew that the science is saying that it's just not going to happen. And I asked my dad, I'm like, so why are you doing this? Because, and he had studied this himself. He's like, listen, I'm going to do what I need to do in order to, take care of, what I believe is my illness. However, if it didn't happen, then it didn't happen. And the funny part was that he was content with it. He was completely okay with it. Yeah. When a neurologist did all the tests and they came back and they're like, well, your condition is a little bit, on the milder side, which allows you to have your normal function, but you do have it. He was not, I could see that, he was not happy, but at the same time, it was like, okay, it didn't happen. And I did what I needed to do. I mean, I think it's one of those things that as we live our lives, again, it's all about us finding that, finding the right direction for our heart to point to and do what we need to do and do exercise our free will, but go through the journey. You can never stop from living. You step through it, but you want to make sure that, your heart is pointing in the right direction so that GPS is getting what it needs to get. So awesome. All right.
Thanks for sharing, Mohsen.
Thank you. Guys, I want to finish this last part. If you guys don't mind, I just want to. I know Rasul is really late for you.
No, I'm fine. I'm perfectly okay. I'll stay with it.
The best, and you read fast.
Yes.
Can you please read? Can you read this last part?
But I'll read. Sure. Where do I start? Explanation of how?
Exactly.
Explanation of how the goldsmith's murder by poisoning was in accord with God's instruction, not due to the passions and corrupt wishes of the carnal soul. Although the healer's killing seems severe, be sure he didn't act through greed or fear. The king's desire instead, divine command creed, he should think of the child whose jugular khizr slit. Most people fail to see the good in it. For those in deep communion with their Lord, their every deed's correct in full accord.
Okay,
hold on. He who gives life. Sorry.
Oops, I forgot that he was referring to khizr in here. All right. Okay, it's right in line with our discussion. So khizr, I don't know if you guys know this or not. Khizr is a prophet which was concurrent with Moses. So the story is both in the Bible, and Khizr has never been mentioned in the Quran, but it's been mentioned, I think, in the Bible and also in the Torah. If I'm mistaken, please help me.
The story is in the Quran.
It is in Quran too.
Khizr is in the Quran?
I do not know if the name is Khizr, but the story of Moses going through learning from Khizr is completely.
That's what I meant. So the name of Khizr is not in the Quran, but the story is actually a very interesting story because it starts from where Moses has been asking God that he wants to be more enlightened and he wants to know more secrets of the universe. Okay. And what he receives back as an answer or as a, as a guidance is that, all right, there is a guy, his name is Khizr, you have to find him. And the way you know where he is at, he is living very close proximity to this, a river which has the eternal water in it. Okay, so by the eternal water, that's where Khizr is. And Moses sets on a journey, goes around, and eventually he finds this place, and eventually he finds Ches. He asks to accompany Ches on a journey, and Ches tells him that there's no way that you can understand what I do, but I'll take you on, but you need to trust me as to what I do. You have to trust what I do, basically. So apparently what happens is that he goes in and he the first thing that he does is that there is a child, and Ches slits the child's throat and kills it. And then he gets to another place, and he basically, there are some boats there. Ches goes and basically sinks the boats. And the third thing that he does is that he builds a wall in the middle of I think a crumbled place. Mohsen, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I mean, I do not know the order, but yes.
Yeah, so he does these three things, and by the time that he finishes the third one, Moses just goes nuts. He's like, I don't get it. Why the hell did you do this? Why did you kill that kid? Why did you sink the boats? And why are you building this thing, and so forth? And apparently Ches, and by the way, Rumi refers to this story a lot. We got 6 books of Masnavi. In every single book, Rumi is referring to this. And even in the poetry of Shams Tabrizi, the other book that we've only read 2 of the poems so far, Rumi refers to this a lot. And the reason Rumi refers to it is that at some point he tells us that there are certain things in life. This is what he wants to tell us, that at some point in life, there are certain actions or there are certain events that happens which none of them are making sense with our mind. So our mind is not able to explain everything that's going around us. So in order for us to fully understand what's going on around us, sometimes we've got to trust. Sometimes we're just going to have to trust. And this is where the element of being patient, not speak and not speak a word, and constantly thanking God comes into play. Go ahead.
Mohsen, this just in case anybody's curious, 1865 is where this story starts about Ches in Quran.
In Quran, 1865 on the. Yes. Oh, on the line 18. So do you know what?
No, Surah is the section 18, verse 65.
Okay, got it. Okay, merci. So the fact of the matter is that the story itself. So in this case, what he's saying is that think of the child whose jugular has slit. Yeah, most people fail to see the good in it. Now, the reason Ches kills the child is that he tells Moses that I had to kill this kid because if he would have grown up, he would have not only killed his own parents, but he would have actually been a very a very destructive king or a very destructive ruler. And the reason he sinks the ships, he says that I did that because there was going to be an attack on this port, and the people who are attacking the port were going to use these ships to actually take the port over. So in order to actually, so in order to actually kind of, hold them back so that they wouldn't take the port, I had to sink these ships. And the third part is that apparently there was the wall that he actually builds. He builds it because there was a treasure, in that place. And in order for the treasure to be found by the rightful owner, Ches needed to actually build a wall. Okay, so these are the 3 reasons as to why he did those three things. And after that, he parts ways with Moses and they never see each other anymore. And, there's a similar story in book 3 of Masnavi about, this. And that is where I want to call it the clash of the Tetons, or the clash of the enlightened souls. So these are people who, even at that level, there's like different levels of people with their vision and their enlightenment level. They also sometimes have questions. Okay, so that's where this is. So very good. Morbai Jan, can you please read the rest?
Yes, sir. Where were for those in deep communion with their Lord, their every deed's correct, in full accord. He who gives life may kill, we must condone. His deputies act like his very own. Like Ismail, lay your neck before his blade and smile for this brave sacrifice you've made, so that your soul will live on joyfully with God, like Ahmad's soul eternally. Each lover drinks the wine of his own soul. When slain by his beloved, that's his goal. The king did not start scheming through desire. Now throw that false suspicion in the fire. You still think he committed sin, don't you? When God refines, no flaws can filter through. Religious discipline and suffering loss is so the furnace burns, the silver's dross. That's why for good and bad we scrutinize, and gold is boiled so that the scum may rise.
Okay, awesome. So basically, as you see, it's not, I mean, you have to kind of take into account that there is a community that he's actually talking through these stories with, and they were also worried, what happened, and he's basically trying to explain what we talked about. And in this case, what, the very, the very essence of the actions, he actually goes and says that, this is something that if, it's the person who gives soul, whatever he does, we're okay with it. And that goes back to the conversation of trust that we had. Okay, please, the rest of them.
So if his deeds from heaven didn't spring, he'd be a dog that bites and not a king. Already he's been purified from greed. His righteous act just seemed a wicked deed. When Khizr destroyed that boat out in the sea, what seemed destructive was pure piety. Moses stayed veiled, though he was wise and good. Don't jump without wings till you've understood. This red's a rose and not a bloody stain. He's drunk with gnosis, don't call him insane. If shedding Muslim blood was his sole aim, I'd be an infidel to bless his name. When evils praise, the highest heavens shake. If pious men applaud, that's their mistake. He was a glorious king and circumspect, handpicked by God, the pure elect. Whoever such a king should choose to slay, more grace and status soon will come his way. If good could not be caused through violence, how could his soul have shown such vehemence?
Awesome. So if you notice, he actually went through the second act that also Chez did. And at the same time, he also gets to a point whereas he literally tells people that if this story was about killing someone, then I wouldn't be the right person to even say it. So this story was not about one person murdering another person. This is not the story is about. So basically, the entire discussion that we had, he is explaining it here, and he's just saying it just because, just like us, just like ourselves, people had questions that, okay, so what does this mean? How do you justify these actions and what they do? Okay, so there's three more lines, please. Thank you.
Sure. When children tremble near the, I'm sorry, I can't see that. When children tremble near the barber's blade, their mothers smile with joy, though they're afraid. For half a life, he gives 100 more, such gifts beyond your dreams he has in store. So stop comparing him with your low state. Reflect on this before it gets too late. I'm sorry, him is God, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So he's talking about a kid, in this case, the barber's blade. The you know how you actually donate blood, or you have I don't know what you call it, but you have people who actually kind of put some take blood out of certain veins. Hijamat بهش میگن. I don't know what they call it.
Bloodletting.
I'm sorry.
Is like blood? Is a bloodletting or a cupping?
A cupping.
Cupping,
exactly.
yeah.
So back then, the barbers were the ones who were doing it. And in this case, he's just using an example that when a barber is doing that to a child, the mother, it totally loves it, but the child is afraid and is bleeding. So what he's trying to say is he's taking this a notch up in a way that there are certain experiences in our lives that we go through, just like how a barber's blade is acting on a child. God puts us through certain experiences in order for us to get better and be better. And it's all for our own good. Go ahead.
To be totally fair, this barber's blade is referring to the act of circumcision.
So the reason I'm referring to the in the Farsi version, it says بچه می‌لرزد از آن نیش حجام. Hijamat. So hijamat is اون موقعی که
I understand. But I think the mother wouldn't be watching the boy doing the hijamat, but they will be watching and being joyful when they do the circumcision because the boy is turning into a man.
Okay, but
that's how the mother will enjoy that process, even though the kid is trembling.
Well, I think the other part they would also. I mean, again, I'm just basically I've got the Farsi version here, which is uses the word hijamat. That's why I can't go for circumcision or.
I cheated because I have the book.
That's fine.
And I followed that asterisk, and that's what the asterisk at the end of the book says.
Oh yeah, the asterisk says that, but the asterisk again, you're right. You're absolutely correct. The asterisk is here. You're absolutely right.
And I followed it, and that's what it says.
Yeah, I know.
At the end of the book.
But the problem is, it's not the same word in the.
I understand.
That's why.
I understand. I didn't mean to change the subject. I thought that that's yeah.
Okay, good. So then he says so for half a life he gives 100 more. So in this case, when he says when he takes half a life, is like it is an expression. Sometimes we come back and say, "Oh my God, I almost died." Have you heard that? Or I went through an experience.
Sorry, Mohsen. It sounded so dramatic, but you're right. You're like, oh my God, I almost died. Yeah.
Exactly. So we say that. We always say that. Oh, this was so dramatic. I almost died. He's saying that it puts you through this to give you 100 more. Mm-hmm. But you have to go through the hardship. Such gifts beyond our dreams he has in store. So in the last one, it says that every time you make a comparison between what happens to you and God, that is a very bad, that's first of all, a false comparison. And every time you make that comparison, you put yourself far, far away from your origin and for your true essence. So it's like, don't do that.
I'm sorry, can you explain that again? So stop comparing him, meaning God, with yourself?
Exactly. So every time we are at our low state, the reason we're at our low state is because our hearts and our mind and the ego are working together and saying, hey, this doesn't make sense. Let me be very blunt about something. Like, for instance, we know that there are massacres in the world of innocent human beings. And I have personally heard sometimes people come back and say, where is God? Is God even looking? That is us comparing him with our low state. The reason is, and again, I want to make sure that you guys exercise patience with this, because there is these questions are always there. The way we react to these questions helps us shape our journey. sometimes people get so tangled up in these questions, they can't even set a foot forward. And Rumi is trying to tell us that don't get tangled up with your low state. You have to sometimes just allow and trust. You just have to do that, because there's no other way that you can explain certain things.
So it's a bad translation, because when it's saying, so stop comparing him with your low state, because Rumi what I understand of Rumi, and I don't know, 1% of what you know, is that he thinks we are all one with the divine source. So you, in a sense, I'm not saying you can compare yourself to God at all, but I'm saying he thinks we're all one and we all belong to the divine source. So it's not really stop comparing him. It's like, stop questioning everything and have faith.
So your statement is correct. Let me just add a little bit more to it. We are one, and we are all part of the divine source. Yes. Right. The problem is that our transmission antenna is pointing to a different direction.
Right.
He's all trying to get us to actually point the antenna in the right direction, so we're connected. Once we're connected, we're at that high state. And as a matter of fact, a majority of these things will even, reflect and show us their true nature. But as long as we stay at that low state and our antennas are pointing towards our ego and towards the questions which sometimes don't even make sense, that is when we're separated from that divine source, and we're completely feel lost.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right, we're going to stop right here. Thank you so much for all the discussions. The next story is kind of funny, so I'm going to prepare you for next week. It's really funny story, actually.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, it has such great lessons again, which builds on what we've already studied. So I'm excited for that one too.
Yes.
Any other thoughts, questions?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Are we reading about this parrot next time?
Yes. So there are two parrots in the first book. There is this one, and then there is another parrot which talks to the merchant. So this is the first parrot, not the other one.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. This was a great class.
Awesome.
Thank you guys. Thanks for the
really
discussion.
enjoyable.
This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Merci.
Merci.
Okay.
Bye-bye.